A bear saved the life of a man, trapped in freezing cold, but no one knows how it happened. In the mountainous region of Montana, Robert, who dreamed of a peaceful and happy camping trip, set off alone for a few days of solitude. Months before, he had carefully tracked the weather and taken every possible risk into account when choosing his campsite. Finally, he picked February 2nd as the day to go. The meteorological reports predicted no snowstorms or dangerous weather in the area. This was an invaluable opportunity for Robert. He quickly packed his gear into the car and set off. However, as he neared the campsite, a sense of unease took over him. Though it was a vague discomfort, he decided not to let it ruin his mood, telling himself, "Nothing is going to ruin my day today." But nature had a different story to tell. As night fell, the weather forecast turned out to be wrong. A fierce snowstorm suddenly hit, catching Robert off guard. The wind was so strong that his camping equipment was blown away, and the cold bit into his bones. His phone had no signal, and reaching his car had become impossible. He needed a miracle to survive. Just then, a massive shadow appeared through the trees. Robert's heart began to race as his eyes locked with a huge grizzly bear. He froze in place, but what happened next would change his life forever. The bear stared at Robert for a while, remaining still. In the cold, dark forest, every move could have serious consequences, but the bear seemed to notice Robert's fear. Then, in an unexpected move, it placed its enormous paws on the ground and began to slowly approach him. Robert collapsed to the ground, unable to move. A sense of finality washed over him. But instead of attacking, the bear sat in front of his tent. Suddenly, the cold and the storm seemed to ease. The bear stretched out its arms and began to wrap itself around Robert, providing warmth. Robert, in shock, realized the bear wasn't aggressive at all. It was trying to keep him alive. As hours passed, Robert realized that the bear's warmth was helping to keep him alive. His tent had already been destroyed, but the bear had carried him to a safer spot. While the storm grew more intense, the bear didn't move. It stayed by Robert's side, protecting him. After a while, the bear's strong body had shielded him from the storm. However, Robert's condition was worsening. No matter how warm the bear kept him, the cold was still too harsh for the human body. Sensing this, the bear gently nudged his head and shoulders, continuing to protect him. Robert was in shock. How was this happening? Was a grizzly bear really hugging him? He was too stunned to believe he was alive. But there was something else. The bear wasn't just helping him physically. It was giving him emotional strength. He had found a reason to survive. By early morning, the storm finally subsided. The biting cold had frozen everything. But with the daylight, Robert felt a bit more at ease. The bear's warmth had kept him from the brink of death. Slowly, he opened his eyes and raised his head to look at the bear again. The bear was still sitting nearby, but it had moved a bit farther back, as if it had stepped back a little, but it seemed ready to protect him. Robert felt a renewed sense of life in his frozen body. The safety and warmth provided by the bear had brought him back to life. He slowly got up, each step making him feel more alive, though still slow, as the cold continued to challenge him. His tent was destroyed, but somehow the bear had managed to move him to a safe area. When he looked back at the bear, it still calmly sat there, but its eyes seemed to convey meaning, as if a bond had formed between them. Robert still couldn't believe what had happened. He never imagined a bear could be so compassionate. But now, he wanted to watch the bear more, spend more time with it. However, the conditions and the weather weren't going to give him much time. His phone still had no signal, and he had to come up with a plan to return to camp. Robert silently observed the bear for a long time. The bear's massive body stood like a mountain in the forest. He thought everything was over, and surviving had been a miracle. But there was one more thing. The bear had helped him, not just physically, but emotionally. At that moment, Robert decided to give the bear a name. "Your name will be Kodiak," Robert said slowly, "because you're a Kodiak bear, a real hero." The bear lowered its head, as if responding. For a moment, Robert felt as though he had received approval from the bear. Kodiak had become the force that saved his life, and Robert was deeply grateful. He took a step toward Kodiak, but still cautious, knowing that bears were wild animals. But the bear didn't harm him. They began to walk together. The bear followed Robert, carefully staying one step behind, watching him. Robert's heart raced. It was incredible how the bear could protect a human like this. With each passing moment, Robert felt his survival instincts and hopes grow stronger. Behind this miraculous survival was Kodiak. But the difficulties weren't over. The weather was still harsh, and moving through the mountainous terrain after the storm wouldn't be easy. Robert noticed that their tent was completely destroyed, and most of their supplies had been lost. But Kodiak didn't retreat. It stayed by his side, following his every step. After a while, Robert grew tired and collapsed on the ground. The bear kept its unwavering watch over him. Kodiak's presence gave him strength. Suddenly, Robert had an idea. "Kodiak, with you, I can get out of this forest." For a few more hours, they trudged forward, step by heavy step. The bear seemed to guide him, ensuring his safety with every move. Finally, with Kodiak's help, they reached the edge of a mountain path. Robert had managed to get out of the dense forest. Kodiak didn't leave him, staying by his side as if it didn't want to part from him. Days of solitude had taught Robert an invaluable lesson. A bear's pure compassion and protective power had changed his life in its darkest moment. Now, he owed something to Kodiak. This giant creature hadn't just given him a chance to survive. It had also pushed him to find a reason to live again. Kodiak continued to support Robert as he moved slowly through the harsh weather of the mountain region. The bear's presence strengthened Robert's survival instincts, helping him feel a little more confident with each step. The cold still gripped his body, but with Kodiak's strength and courage, he pressed on. After a while, before darkness set in, they started to look for shelter. Kodiak led Robert into the bushes and quickly found a solid area, settling down to protect Robert from the elements. Kodiak's preparedness gave Robert hope. The bear was not just a wild animal. It had become his companion. Looking at Kodiak with gratitude, Robert scanned his surroundings. The snowstorm had let up, but the snow continued to accumulate. But somehow, he felt at peace. Kodiak's presence reminded him that, even in the fight for survival, he was never truly alone. They would spend the night there. As they sat in the shelter, Kodiak by his side, Robert closed his eyes, lost in thought. He thought about the past and the future, about the time that had passed. Life once seemed so simple and ordinary, but now, here he was, being protected by a bear. What a miraculous transformation, he thought. His mind was spinning. Before falling asleep, Robert whispered to Kodiak, "This life has given me a second chance. Thanks to you. As long as we're here together, we can reshape this life." As the night wore on, Kodiak stayed by his side, loyal and patient. The silent bond between man and bear was as old and strong as the stars in the sky. In that moment, Robert was witnessing the strongest connection that could exist between a human and an animal. What they both realized was simple. Survival wasn't just a physical struggle. It was an emotional one. And Kodiak had been there every step of the way. The next morning, before the sun rose, Robert woke up to find Kodiak still by his side. His eyes were tired, but his heart was at peace. A new day had begun. And together, they now had the belief that they could make it out of this tough environment. With the first light of dawn, Kodiak looked at Robert and began to move deeper into the forest, searching for food. Robert quickly followed, not wanting to leave his side. Though it was hard to trust at first, Robert knew that without Kodiak, he had no chance of surviving. Over time, the effects of the snowstorm gradually diminished. The weather warmed, and some of the snow began to melt. Robert, moving faster, followed Kodiak. The hope of reaching more open spaces in the forest pushed him to move quickly. The bear wasn't just moving him from one place to another. It was giving him the space to live. Now, helping him survive in this wild nature had become its mission. Robert's survival story with Kodiak is truly a reminder that sometimes the most unlikely heroes come from the wild. A grizzly bear, with its raw strength and compassion, saved his life and taught him the power of unexpected bonds. What do you think? Can animals like Kodiak truly sense when humans need help? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you found this story as incredible as we did, don't forget to like and share it. Subscribe for more amazing tales of survival and unexpected heroes. See you in the next video.